I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Boulder Valley Board of Education for Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Garcia. Gebhardt. Niznik.
Here.
Rajpal.
Here.
Sargent.
Here.
Sweeney Moran.
Here.
Zis.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will begin our meeting with our land acknowledgement. Beth, will you please read it tonight?
Happily. Boulder Valley School District resides and operates on land that is the ancestral homeland and unjustly and illegally taken territory of the Ute, Puebloan, Arapaho, Cheyenne, Apache, Navajo, and 48 other tribal nations historically tied to this land, who have called this land home since time immemorial. We acknowledge the atrocities committed here, including the painful history of genocide, forced assimilation, and efforts to alienate the indigenous inhabitants from their homeland, supported by the policies of the United States government. BVSD is aware of the many indigenous peoples, past and present, and their dignified nations and cultures who care for the land with strength and resilience. BVSD recognizes the histories of the land in Colorado and the survival of many nations that carry their oral traditions into the present. It is BVSD's responsibility to educate ourselves, our communities, and our students so that we can embrace the wisdom and knowledge of Indigenous peoples and actively stand together to address injustices. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm and honor the history, wisdom, oral traditions, and resilience of Indigenous people and recognize the responsibility to care for and appreciate this land together.
Thank you, Beth. I'd like to remind everybody that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us electronically on BV22 or here in person. We're glad to have you observe and participate in our meetings. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve our agenda for this evening. A second from Nicole. Laura, can you please call the vote on the motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Niznik.
Yes.
Rajpal.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. We'll begin, as always, with the superintendent's report. Dr. Anderson, good evening.
Thank you, Vice President Sweeney Moran, members of the board. Good evening. Good to see you all. Just a few updates this evening. Board members and for our public, this week is Boulder Valley School District's Employee Appreciation Week. You may have seen some of the messages that we've sent out on social media or through our website. Board members, as you may know, every year we schedule this special celebration to coincide with National Teacher Appreciation Week, which is this week, May through May 12th, so we can join the rest of the country in showing our gratitude to our outstanding educators who lead the way in Colorado and beyond, as well as recognize that it takes an entire team within our school district and within each school and department to serve our students and community on a daily basis. Any chance I get, I brag on the quality of our people. We have amazing people in this school district. People are certainly our strength. They are the reason that we provide such a great education for our students and for our families. And so I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of our employees for all that you do. Happy Employee Appreciation Week, and make sure that we just take a moment to recognize them here tonight. On May 1st, Dr. De La Cruz and I joined Congressman Joe Neguse in congratulating Superior Elementary on its National Blue Ribbon Award. Superior was one of 4 schools across the state of Colorado and one of maybe a couple hundred across the country to receive this award. It was a great day to really recognize the school for this achievement. And so I want to thank Congressman Neguse and all of our parents and for the kids who did a great job performing. And then at the end, they did a really neat picture where they all got into like initials of the school and did a drone shot. It was really neat. So congrats, Superior Elementary. Also would love to send birthday wishes to Mapleton. Mapleton Early Childhood Center was 10 years old this month, so we want to send birthday wishes to Mapleton. I know they had a great celebration, and it looks like the students and teachers had a lot of fun with that. Board members, as you may know, Mapleton was first built in 1889 and operated as an elementary school for decades, but for the last 10 years, after extensive renovations, it's reopened to Mapleton Early Childhood Center. And so congrats to Mapleton and happy birthday. And then last night, we had two really cool events here at the Ed Center. Members of our BVSD's Youth Equity Council gathered last night with their families and district leaders to celebrate their works towards equity this school year and had a really neat end of the year celebration. What was really cool, they took a moment to thank those in the community, including teachers who have supported their efforts. Just an outstanding group of students, student leaders who have advocated tirelessly for equity efforts throughout our district and our community. So I want to just thank all the members of our Youth Equity Council, Dr. Amy Nelson, Dr. Nicole Villa, that have been doing really great work in supporting those students. We also last night had Tech Fest. Boulder Tech hosted a wonderful event to highlight the outstanding programs available at Boulder Tech, and it was the first ever Tech Fest. We had a lot of our students and community come out, prospective future students and parents, and had music, food, information. Just the energy that's surrounding Boulder Tech, our career and technical education programming, our industry certification career pathways is just really, really exciting. And so I want to thank the folks at Boulder Tech and everybody who came out last night to celebrate that. And finally, board members, it's time for our student moment. Tonight, we have a student who saw a need in their classroom and took it upon themselves to find a solution, which he's turned into a small business. So let's welcome up student entrepreneur Yannick Sturm Asare. Yannick, take it away.
Good evening, my name is Yannick, and I'm a 5th grader at Mesa Elementary. Thank you for allowing me to present about my product Shoo Shoes that I am currently piloting at Mesa. I first came up with Shoo Shoes when I was in 2nd grade, and we moved from California. In my old school there, we had indoor and outdoor shoes, so whenever we were in our classroom, we would just wear indoor shoes that we kept there, and whenever we were at recess or anywhere else, we would wear street shoes from home. And then in my new school here in Boulder, we just wore our street shoes inside the classroom, which made the floor a little dirty. And then when we sat on the floor for meetings, my pants would get dirty, and I didn't like my pants dirty. So then I asked my teacher why we didn't have 2 pairs of shoes, and she said that's because they didn't want to ask the parents to buy a second pair of shoes in case they might not be able to afford it. I told my mom about this, and she encouraged me to come up with a solution. So after a little bit of thinking, I came up with the shoe covers that you sometimes see in hospitals, but I wanted them to be nicer looking and also reusable. My mom thought this was a really fun idea, so she agreed to sew shoe covers for the kids in my class, and so we sent out a survey asking them to give us their shoe sizes, so my mom knew what shoe covers to sew. After we got the results back, we put the data into a graph and then analyzed it. But first we had to clean up the data because some kids wrote size 13 and others just wrote 13. And we needed consistent data for the analysis. So I learned how important it is to put clear questions in your survey. Once we knew the shoe sizes of everyone in my class, my mom started sewing the first shoe covers. Next slide, please. And then the COVID-19 pandemic started, and I couldn't go to school anymore. And because I had some extra time outside of online school, my mom and I started to do some additional research. We learned that the average shoe has around 421,000 units of bacteria on it, which makes the average shoe dirtier than the average toilet seat. Not a good idea to be sitting on dirty floors, not only for my classroom, but for every classroom. Next slide, please. And then the pandemic took much longer than we thought it would, and we had some extra time for research, and we started looking into having shoes made by manufacturers. We got samples and started figuring out the best sizes. After receiving our first samples, I tried them out by wearing them in my classroom for a few days, and then we asked my current school, Mesa, to do a whole classroom wearing them, and 1st grade teacher, Miss Moore, agreed to have her kids do a 1-month pilot where the whole class would be wearing shoes for a month. For the pilot, every kid received a pair of shoes, and we made sure they were easily stored when not in use. The kids would wear the shoes in the classroom, and when they left, they would just take them off. After a few weeks, the kids gave me advice to help me improve my shoes. They all liked the shoes, which was really exciting because we were expecting a few casualties because it was our first time in a classroom, but it worked out great. Next slide, please. Okay. One of the most exciting parts of the pilot was I was invited into the first grade classroom to give a short presentation and answer all of the first graders' questions. I really loved this because I was able to share all the things I had learned. For example, I learned how to create surveys, collect the data, and then analyze it. I learned video editing for marketing purposes, and also because I am the emperor of marketing for my business. My mom also showed me how bookkeeping works and where you keep track of all your expenses, and then I learned that I'm not going to be an accountant. I also practiced my public speaking like today. I hope that from my presentation in the first grade classroom, some of the first graders have been inspired to start a business of their own because it's a lot of fun and you can learn a lot. Miss Moore put the shoes in the Monday message for Mesa, which is just a slideshow that is sent to the whole school. So now the school knew about it. And then another first grade teacher, Miss Bush, has already agreed to do another pilot in September. And I can come into her classroom and give another presentation about entrepreneurship. I'm very excited, and I'm hoping that also some other schools will want to try out shoes for free in exchange for feedback. I also want to invite interested schools to email me at yannick@shoeshostore.com. Thank you very much for having me today, and I also want to thank Mesa for being such a great collaborator, and particularly Miss Moore. And I also want to thank my mom for making shoes become a reality.
Thank you so much, Yannick. That was an excellent presentation and a very cool idea as well.
Thank you.
Rob, did you have more for us this evening?
No, that is definitely it. Great job, Yannick.
Board members, any responses for Rob? Kitty?
So do you have plans to scale this business up?
Yeah, and we're trying to get like a few other products. We already have some shoes at a store called Childish Things, and we have our website up.
Very cool. I'm going to check that out.
Thanks.
And that's shoeshostore.com?
Yeah.
Just making sure you're getting the press out there. Stacy?
Thank you for your presentation. You're very good at public speaking.
Thanks. I've been working on it.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, we will now begin the public participation section of the board meeting. Members of the public who wish to speak at tonight's meeting were asked to sign up prior to noon today by submitting the request to speak during public participation form that can be found on the BVSD website or by contacting the board secretary, Laura Schaefer. Public participants have the option to attend the meeting in person or join and present their comments via Google Meet. The board respects the right of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. The board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they are responsible for their own speech. Please note that this is a listening opportunity for the board, and the board does not engage in a dialogue or answer questions as part of public participation. The board needs time to consider the comments made and may include items on future board meeting agendas to address issues raised by our public and community. To ensure that our meeting is conducted in an orderly manner, we ask that persons who address the board confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Recognize that students often attend or view our meetings. Speakers' remarks should therefore be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade students. The board president, or in this case vice president, may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement that is unrelated to the business of the district or inappropriate for K-12 students. Please limit your presentation to 2 minutes. If you run out of time or if you would like to share additional information, you may email the board. You will see a yellow card when you have 30 seconds remaining, and when you have 10 seconds, you will see the orange card. Please wrap up your comments. At the end of your 2 minutes, a timer will sound and the microphone will be muted. Okay. We have several speakers this evening addressing non-agenda items, and as always, we will begin with our students. So we are going to kick the evening off with Molly Weber.
You'll want to push the button so that the red light goes on. There you go.
Hi, I'm Molly, and I'm a sophomore at Fairview High School. 3 months ago, I attended a training by the Sunrise Movement, which is a movement of youth climate activists from across the nation who champion the Green New Deal. They taught us about a new project they were launching called the Green New Deal for Schools. It is a project to implement the principles of the Green New Deal at a school level. When I got back from the training, I spent the next weeks organizing, gathering petition signatures, researching, and bringing more people into the movement for climate justice. And now I'm here today to urge you to bring sustainability to BVSD in a just way. The first way is through sustainable infrastructure and transportation. We're calling for solar panels to be installed on all BVSD buildings lacking them to provide our schools with 100% renewable, reliable energy. We're also calling for all school buses to be electrified and for free RTD bus passes to be provided for students that need them. Second, we need pathways to green jobs. We need our schools to offer opportunities to connect students with good-paying union jobs combating the climate crisis. We urge you to make it mandatory that our schools teach us how all careers, no matter what field they may be in, can contribute to a sustainable economy. Third, we need climate disaster plans. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and extreme because of the climate crisis, as I'm sure you all know. When a climate disaster strikes, our schools need to have extensive plans on how to help students get through the event and recover afterwards. Fourth and finally, we're calling for climate curriculum. Students need to be taught a comprehensive climate justice curriculum that helps them understand our history and prepares them to fight the climate crisis. We have collected 920 petition signatures from students and teachers in the district for a Green New Deal for BVSD. Thank you for your time and consideration to implement the Green New Deal in BVSD schools.
Thank you, Molly. Up next, we have Tilly Testa.
Hi, my name is Tilly Testa, and I'm a sophomore at Fairview High School. I'm here today to tell you why I think it's important that BVSD supports the Green New Deal for Schools movement. For as long as I can remember, nature has been my escape, my safe place, where I feel comfortable and confident in who I am, and a place until recently that I thought would always be there. But now, the climate crisis is threatening to take that away. The climate crisis has time and time again put the things that we love on the line, and that can be terrifying to think about. Rising temperatures, higher sea levels, sky-high extinction rates, and the increasingly common wildfires that we experience here in Colorado are proof that climate change is a problem that needs to be addressed. And while this issue seems to be left on our generation's shoulders, we need leaders like you to help us solve this issue. I know that BVSD is already taking steps toward combating the climate crisis, but I think that consolidating these policies under one title, the Green New Deal for Schools, paves the way for other school districts to do the same. By enforcing this policy, we can make sustainable buildings, climate curriculum, and pathways to green jobs the norm. We can teach kids how to grow up in a world where the climate change impacts us every day. And we can inspire the next generation of changemakers who are passionate enough to help change that. So with all of this in mind, I am asking you to please take this into consideration. We need the Green New Deal policy put in place in all of our BVSD schools, not only to help our students in our district, but those across the country. Please help BVSD become a leader in this movement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tilly. Up next, we have Rosemary Greenberg.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Greenberg, and I am also a sophomore at Fairview High School. I'm here today to convince all of you that the Green New Deal is something very important that we should implement in our school district. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always been very passionate about preserving the environment that we live in. Every time we learn about climate crisis in a science class, I'm left wondering what the solution is. Over the past few years, however, I've realized that that is up to all of us. The Green New Deal is a great place to start. Not only would it provide convenient ways for kids of all ages to help preserve the environment, it would also ensure that every child in BVSD is well educated and prepared to combat the climate crisis now and in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rosemary. Up next, we have Ella Singh.
Hello, my name is Ella Sang, and I'm a sophomore at Fairview High School. I recently joined the Green New Deal for Schools campaign at Fairview, and it is very important to me that the issue of climate change is addressed, and we need to start at the school level. In everyday life for me, and the majority of people, especially in Boulder, a lot of time is spent outside enjoying nature. From commuting to school and in my extracurricular activities, the fresh air and beautiful landscapes all around us instantly makes my day better. From running or biking through the mountains to walking around in a park, nature benefits us all, although this is soon to come crashing down. The climate crisis we are currently experiencing will be detrimental to nature and all those that enjoy it. Fires ravage our forests, floods damage our towns and parks, and before we know it, the great outdoors we once loved will be changed forever. This is why it is so important to me to fight climate change, and this is why it's important that the Green New Deal for Schools campaign will help in this fight, and the mountains, trees, grass, and rivers will thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ella. Up next, we have Elias Putterman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elias Putterman. I'm a junior at Fairview, and I just wanted to highlight the importance of the Green New Deal and what it means to me. So, in 2013, there was a massive flood that devastated all of Lyons and parts of Boulder. And weeks after this event had happened, my parents and I drove up to Lyons just to see if their wedding spot was still there, only to find virtually nothing left and just a big pile of rubble. And my dad said to me that this is just the beginning of events like these that can totally just devastate communities. And that always had a spark in me, like, wow, we really need to come together and just think about the impact that we have on our planet. And the Green New Deal is a great start for that. And the Green New Deal will provide education in schools for students, and it will allow for students to come together and think about the climate crisis and for the future. And I believe that education is a great way for students to come together and think of solutions. And that's why I think the Green New Deal is monumental and is essential to be passed in schools. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Elias. Up next, we have Emma Weber.
Hi, my name is Emma Weber, and I'm also a sophomore at Fairview High School. I'm here tonight to encourage you all to pass a Green New Deal for Boulder Valley schools so that our schools and buses run on 100% renewable energy, provide students pathways to green jobs, are prepared with climate disaster plans, and teach students a comprehensive climate justice curriculum. Over the past few years, fires have become increasingly common in Colorado, and many of them have affected our communities and students. Last March, the NCAR fire evacuated much of our community. I remember driving home from visiting my grandparents when my friend called me and said, "There's a fire." Over the next couple hours as we drove home, my sister, mom, and I called everyone we knew, trying to find someone to take our box of important documents without endangering themselves. We finally found a friend who could, and my mom asked me what things of mine I wanted her to get. I didn't know what to say. I didn't have a firebox. I didn't have a plan. I was terrified. The feeling of driving home not knowing whether your home would be there when you get back is horrifying. We spent the night at another friend's house, and in the morning the fire was contained. We were lucky enough to return home. But there are so many cases where going home never happens. As the climate crisis worsens, climate disasters like the NCAR fire are becoming increasingly common and increasingly severe. We need to prepare all students for this new reality. This is just one of countless reasons why BVSD schools need a Green New Deal. Thank you for your time and consideration of this vital topic.
Thank you, Emma. Up next, we have Rylan Newman.
Hello, I'm Rylan Newman, and I'm also a sophomore at Fairview High School. I support the demands of this campaign because the students in BVSD, including myself, will have to live in a climate-affected world and deal with the consequences of climate change. But young people also have the power and determination to stop climate change. I have attended many protests and have experienced this power. I have used my own power to influence my family's decisions on everything from how they plan our garden to what bank they use and what careers they choose. I have also seen the dedication of my friends, which has led to the expansion of our environmental club at Fairview. But many students in the district don't have the knowledge about what climate change is, how it applies to them, and the resources they have to fight it, so they don't do anything to prevent climate change. I strongly believe that we need to talk about climate change more in schools so students can take action outside of schools. I know that the school board already has a plan regarding climate change, but I want this plan to go farther to make climate change mitigation one of the top priorities of BVSD. I know that 29 buildings in BVSD already have solar panels, and that there's a grant on the agenda today that would fund the installation of solar on Fairview and 5 other schools. I strongly support this grant and excited to see it implemented. I am also very grateful that BVSD is taking action to fight climate change and that there are climate goals. I believe our 4 demands of sustainable infrastructure, climate education, pathways to green jobs, and climate disaster plans align with BVSD's climate plan and will help achieve its goals. We need these demands implemented as soon as possible because climate change is an issue that continues to get worse and we only have a limited time to fix it. So I ask you, school board members, to consider our stories and our demands and start implementing them as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rylan. Up next, we have Tanner Meyer.
Tanner's not here.
All right, moving on. Next, we have Sunny Justice. Sunny was granted 2 additional minutes by Josh Meyer, if Josh Meyer is here to grant them.
Thanks for having me here today. My name is Sunny Justice, and I am here to represent my 14-year-old son and other children who are experiencing bullying in the BVSD school district. I want BVSD to be held accountable and to follow their own policies for protecting children and from ongoing harassment and bullying. In November, our son asked for us to help with homophobic bullying. We began advocating with staff, administration, and the district starting in early November to stop the bullying. We involved the district in November because the teachers at their school told us that the administration does not handle bullying and discipline. We were constantly in the office, on the phone, and via email, literally begging anyone and everyone to make school a safe place for our son. Since November, my husband and I have been consumed with fear for our son and what this relentless hatred would do to his mental health. He was made to feel unwelcome and unsafe at his school in Boulder Valley. Our son filed numerous reports with the administration, including some that stated, "Bullies are preying on my mental health. I do not feel safe at school. My goal by coming forward is so no other students have to suffer like I am." He used his voice and his leadership skills, and he looked to the adults in charge to help, to make school a safe place. Each time our son filed a report with the administration, instead of having the bullying stop, even more kids were recruited to harass and retaliate against him, creating a ripple effect. It was like a tidal wave threatening to drown my family. To date, the administration has been unwilling to call the relentless homophobic actions directed at him bullying. BVSD policy ACR states that within 7 days of completing an investigation, a principal should issue an outcome report to all parties involved, including parents. The outcome report should include steps to eliminate the harassment and prevent any retaliation. In our experience, the policy was not followed. We believe the administration did not investigate many of the bullying reports submitted. They also did not notify us that reports had been filed per BVSD policy or tell us of their concerning content. We are fortunate that our son is still here today. When our son received a knife threat at school from another student, we were never contacted by a safety resource officer. The administration did not take this threat seriously, and our son did not feel safe at school. When we filed a Title IX complaint against one of the main bullies, we were told by the Title IX coordinator that school would not be able to discipline the bully while the complaint was pending, giving the bully a free pass to harass our son for the 3 to 6 months it would take to do the investigation. Per BVSD policy, the Title IX coordinator should not talk a student or parent out of filing a complaint. However, that is what happened. What are the consequences for administrators and schools not following BVSD policies when it comes to bullying, harassment, and Title IX? I feel my children's school was toxic. We've been told that the N-word has been written on many locations in the boys' bathrooms for months. My youngest was surrounded and grabbed by peers telling him to convert to Christianity or he was going to hell. Other students have been bullied for identifying as being gay. The week my children transferred out of school, I know at least one other student who also left because of bullying. In March, due to the relentless bullying, both of our boys switched to a new middle school. The district knows of these incidents, and yet the offending students and administrators get to continue on at the same school, business as usual, even though BVSD policies are not followed. This is unacceptable, and the trusted adults are there to safeguard and educate our children refuse to stand up. I hope you, the board, will stand up and demand BVSD follow their harassment and bully policies. I hope you will stand up and protect students because I strongly believe the district are not putting students first. They're only protecting themselves. And if I can read one more thing, I just wrote BVSD policy states, there is no place for this type of behavior in our halls of our schools or anywhere in BVSD, yet the bullying and harassment continues to exist in our schools. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sunny. Up next, we have Laura Collins, who's been given 2 minutes from Sarah Male, if Sarah is also present to donate them.
Online.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead, Laura.
First, your son is very lucky to have you guys, and I hope that some action, I don't even know where you're sitting, but I hope some action is taken. Like, he's lucky to have you. I wish I wasn't going after that because I'm feeling emotional about that. Okay, my name is Laura Collins. I am a survivor of the Marshall Fire. I've spoken at, I think, 3 to 4 of these, so I feel like you guys know me by now. And I'm here because I feel like BVSD's response to our concerns that the 8 schools impacted by the Marshall Fire potentially not being safe and still having smoke toxins has not been addressed by BVSD. In fact, I feel like I've been gaslit and our concerns have been minimized. So before I get into that, I'm just going to do a quick little smoke damage, because unless you've lived through it, you don't know what it is, and you shouldn't. It's kind of like when someone in your family gets a medical diagnosis and suddenly you can pronounce these like 6-syllable medical terminologies and you become a doctor. I've become way too knowledgeable in smoke damage. So these are all true-false questions in your head. You can just kind of think about it. So if you can't see it or smell it, it is safe. The answer is false, although that is what the industry currently operates on. When I asked how would I know if my home was safe, I literally had 3 men lower their masks and tell me, we'll sniff the air. If we can't see it, if we can't smell it, you're safe. That was my first red flag, that although that may be the way that they run their business, there's got to be a better way. Question 2, the Marshall Fire was a wildfire. It's false. It was a fire. But wildfires typically consume trees and grass. I had people's solar panels on the front lawn of my house. People's cars burned, paint thinners burned, all of this stuff. If you think about the train derailment in Ohio, those chemicals that spilled from those trains burned in the Marshall Fire. It's the same issue. There was already ash, soot, and char in our schools from other wildfires. This is true, and I actually anticipate BVSD to say you maybe found some char in Fireside, but it could have been from a barbecue, it could be from the freeway, it could be from a different fire. If that is the case, I would say take those samples that you have and send it out to a laboratory to see, are there heavy metals in there? Are there dioxins? Are there furans? These are all things that are carcinogenic. Question 4, if something is closed tightly, fire particulates cannot get in. False. I have a lot of false ones here. The lab data shows that even if you have a sealed sterilite container, you can find fire byproducts inside that container. So when BVSD says that they closed the air HVAC systems and that's going to prevent the contamination of schools, that is categorically false. 5, smoke damage can cause short and long-term health issues. This is true. Exposure to these chemicals increases the risk of cancer, can cause respiratory illnesses, increases the heart disease, and impacts neurological development. 6, HEPA vacuuming and the wiping of surfaces removes all ash, soot, and char.
This is what BVSD did. This is what the schools in Ohio have done. They've done a deep clean with the experts. But my house was deep cleaned, and then we tested our very nicely white walls, and there was char on our walls still, and my entire house had to be encapsulated and repainted. I'm coming up on time, so I'll save my second half for the next time I'm here, because I probably will be here in 2 weeks. So what I want to say is that you guys tested Fireside, so thank you for testing a school. Although I will say that I think you tested it only because a parent found evidence of char within the school. So you kind of had we forced your hand in taking action for that. Testing one school is not representative of the other 7 schools. These schools are as many as 5 miles apart. You could have a house across the street from the other house that would have been impacted differently. It's going to have to do with the age of the school. I think LES is almost 60 years old, the age of the windows, and all these other factors. So I hope that when you're going to share the results, you don't give us a high-level summary, but we deserve the actual data so that we can determine if that school is safe, and then the other school should also be tested. It's 4,500 kids.
Thank you, Laura.
See you in 2
can send
weeks.
us your remarks in full to our email address. Next, we have Sean Ward, who is virtual.
Hi there. I'll put video. Well, I'll just go here. My name is Sean Ward. I'm a parent of a second grader at Crestview. She's currently enrolled in the SAC program, school age care. She's been there for 2 years. SAC provides before and after care service and school day off camps for children. It's a critical service for working parents who are struggling to keep up with inflation and the rising cost of living in Boulder County. Unfortunately, SAC registration for 2023-2024 school year was a complete disaster. The registration portal for SAC opened on May 1st at 6 a.m. with a registration window of 2 weeks. However, the capacity for nearly all schools in the district filled up in under 2 hours, including at Superior Elementary, which on that exact same day was celebrating its blue ribbon status, while parents were unable to get into SAC. The SAC website actually today reports that it received over 900 applications in the first few hours, and parents should not call or email for support. It's on there right now on the website. The registration for parents, the experience was essentially like buying tickets for a Taylor Swift show. We were in competition over essential childcare services. The result is that many current families with kids enrolled in the program, including parents who lost their houses in the Marshall Fire, now are being kicked out of SAC, and their kids are being told that SAC is unavailable. This is an unacceptable situation. I'm here to ask, what is the district doing about it? I strongly encourage the board to put all options on the table, including allowing third-party providers on site like the YMCA. That's the way it used to be done. Before this meeting, I learned that the district passed a policy in January 2021, making SAC the exclusive provider of on-site childcare programming. Maybe it's time to revisit that decision. And if the district insists on continuing to be the exclusive provider, then it needs to provide adequate services and a solution. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Sean. Finally, we have Tiffany Gengelbach, who is getting 2 minutes from Jay, as long as he is online. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the board for addressing the important issue of school lunch extensions during your last work session. I wanted to comment on a couple of things that came up during that work session to clarify some research and to encourage the board to take appropriate steps to care for our youngest school-age children. I appreciate the comments made by some board members that ensuring that our children are not hungry during the school day should be a top priority. One of you even said that we could have the best curriculum in the country and it wouldn't matter if our kids don't have their basic needs met. I could not agree more. One concern that I heard from the board is that you weren't sure it would matter if we extended lunch because it might not translate to more food eaten. Let me assure you that the research indicates that more time equals more and better quality calories consumed. Not only do kids eat more when given an appropriate 20 minutes to sit and eat, they are also more likely to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, in a public-facing email last week, the district informed parents that it has shown that more time does not equal more food consumed. Not only was that not shown during your work session, it is also contrary to all scientific studies. Errors made in public must be corrected in public. And I request that you direct the district employee who sent out that falsehood to retract that statement in a follow-up email so that our parents are properly informed. Another concern that I heard from a district employee was that some principals are worried that if lunch is extended, there may be behavior issues with students. Again, this is contrary to the scientific record. The research indicates that longer lunches improve academic performance, boost motivation, improve mood, help develop social skills, and increase feelings of contentment and security. But again, the district last week in a public email indicated it was shown in your work session that longer lunchtimes may lead to misbehavior. There is no evidence that this is true, and I request a public correction of that statement. In fact, it sounds to me a lot like an empty excuse not to meet our children's basic needs for food because to do so would be inconvenient to adults. I heard the concern that it is not the board's place to micromanage school administration in the matter of their daily schedules, and I completely agree. But you don't need to micromanage how each school gives their children adequate time to eat. You only need to direct them to figure it out for their own schools in the way that best meets their other needs. I would even encourage you to give elementary schools another 10 minutes in the day to accommodate an extra 10 minutes at lunch. I told you the last time that I spoke here that I have timed my children having only 8 to 13 minutes to sit and eat lunch during their 20-minute lunch period. How would you like it if I told you that you could only eat lunch for 10 minutes? The assertion during the work session that children who don't finish their lunches are provided extra time flies in the face of my own experience and the experience of other parents and their students who have seen this play out every day. In my school, I have witnessed a whole grade of children being held up from going to recess because one tray was still on a table. I cannot imagine a greater incentive to throw away wanted food than the peer pressure that this creates. Our children deserve to be treated as human beings with dignity and needs, not pieces in an assembly line. 10 minutes is simply not enough time for children who are still learning to listen to their bodies to eat a meal. Finally, I gently beg district employees to be more careful with the truth. There is no excuse for misrepresenting the scientific record. I've thoroughly and carefully presented extensive research to the board, which I hope has trickled down to the employees discussing this matter. I'm genuinely not aware of any research that contradicts what I've sent to you in December. If there is such research, I ask that district staff cite their sources. It appears that much of the research that is unfavorable to their desire to keep the status quo has been ignored. Keep in mind we're supposed to be teaching our children integrity in how they present their research projects. I ask the board to hold district employees accountable for honesty in presenting the research. There is a reason the CDC recommends 20 minutes of seated eating time for lunch. There are not equal pros and cons on both sides of this issue. As another board member stated in the last work session, this issue comes up again and again. That means it's not going away, and people care about it, and it's important. Please don't continue to pass the buck. Set out an appropriate timeline for the district and individual schools to figure this out and give our children 30 minutes total for lunch. It's important enough that administrators should be able to overcome any complexities they encounter. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tiffany. And that concludes our open comment for tonight. We will move on to board communication. Who would like to go first? No one? Kitty.
So I want to thank everybody who came and spoke to us today, especially the students who are lobbying for the Green New Deal in schools. It is so great to see our kids getting involved. And if anybody can save us, it's going to be your generation. So thank you so much. Also, my daughter was told she was going to hell in school, and she's almost 35 now. So I can sympathize, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you all for coming. Hey, students, before you all take off, if you want to send on that petition that you mentioned to all of us to our email address, that would be great so we can see more about what you're doing. I appreciate that you all came here tonight. Stacy, go ahead.
I just want to extend also my happy Employee Appreciation and National Teacher Appreciation Week to all of our great employees and teachers. It's all over Facebook and Instagram, and I have friends thanking friends for all their hard work, and just really important to appreciate all of our staff.
Okay. Let's see, moving right along. We have 3 information items this evening. The first is the legislative session recap, which went out with more of a whimper than a boom. Do we have anything to share?
We do. We have our team from Policy Matters here that would be happy to give a brief kind of overview of the session. So Tanya, Heather, Taylor, come on up to the microphone. Our team, I was very proud of our lobbying team. They worked really hard on several key issues on behalf of the school district down at what was an interesting session, and I'm sure they'll give you the highlights. So I will turn it over to the Policy Matters team.
We just want to say hello, but we also really want to thank you for your service as a parent of kids in both middle school and high school, and just the issues that you all are up against. And many of you had us lobby to help a lot of the issues that the people just identified in public testimony. We want to thank you for your leadership and for, I think, the courage and hard work that you have, both as board members and as superintendent, to serve our kids, our families, and our community. So thank you very much. I'm Tanya.
Taylor.
And I'm Heather.
So we'll just jump right in. As Dr. Anderson alluded to, the General Assembly had a very interesting session. We just concluded yesterday the 120-day session, so you're getting us hot off the press. This year, we saw a lot of new faces after the November election. Just one chair short of 50% of the legislators were new. So that was very interesting to see them navigate. The running joke is we had to have help a lot of people find the bathroom. With that as well, we had one of the most diverse legislatures in Colorado's history, and diverse in every way that you can imagine that word. So it was a lot of fun. I think especially after elections, we typically see a really big uptick in K-12 policy, and this year was no exception. We saw the whole gamut of issues, including school funding, accountability, discipline, testing, equity, school safety. If it has anything to do with schools, there was a bill about it. This year we tracked a little bit over 40 bills, so we could spend the next 120 days really diving into each of those, but we'll reserve that for our more in-depth update that we'll provide to you written. But we wanted to highlight some of the really big ones that came down the pike that would have impacted BVSD or will impact BVSD. The first two had to do with school discipline. So House Bill 1109, this one would have changed procedurally how schools implement additional safeguards for expulsion hearings. Legally, it was not something that would have been something BVSD could have implemented. We worked very closely with the bill sponsors to communicate that, and they ultimately recognized that and decided to postpone that bill indefinitely. A bill that ran tangentially to that was Senate Bill 29. This was disproportionate discipline in public schools. This one, very similarly, had some really great ideas, but wouldn't actually be practical and operational and did not get at the intent. So instead, they flipped that over to a task force that will be meeting over the interim to really dig in on school discipline and how we can make sure that kids are being served equitably. Additionally, and again, I will also, this year was also the year of task force. A lot of bills got turned into task force, so we will have a very busy interim. The next bill was House Bill 1241, Task Force Study K-12 Accountability System. So this came after the audit over this last year that did not find adequate findings, so they want to do an additional task force. I want to thank Dr. Anderson for coming down and working with our bill sponsors and representing Boulder Valley and making sure that our voice was heard on that task force and in those conversations.
There was also a bill, House Bill 1259, on open meetings for executive session violations. This bill, as introduced, would have allowed school boards to cure potential executive session violations at the next board meeting. It was scaled back pretty significantly right at the end of the session, and instead just allows school boards to recoup plaintiffs' fine or plaintiffs' attorney fees when those suits are unsuccessful. The other bill, Senate Bill 286, around CORA, so this is the Colorado Open Records request. There was an expansion of this bill that requires those open records to be given electronically if there's an electronic version of the record available, and it also prevents the charging of fees per page when those requests are made. So.
And then the final bill we wanted to talk about, which we'll let Tanya, just a little itty bitty bill that you may have heard of around property taxes.
And I think the other big piece that we really wanted to highlight, of course, was the school finance bill that Taylor and Heather both talked about. The majority of our time was really on fighting the fight to get the BS factor, the budget stabilization factor, ironic name. But I remember that we have to be around children, so I can't completely commiserate around that name. But I really do want to call out specifically Superintendent Anderson and our CFO, Bill Sutter, who came down and fought. We had I think, 15 to 20 meetings that day, not just with the Boulder Valley School District delegation, but with the leadership from the House Education Committee, both the chair of the House Ed Committee, the chair of the Senate Ed Committee, leadership in general, the majority leader, the president of the Senate, that we went and lobbied about the importance. That bill initially was $150 million, and we were successfully able to get that BS buy down to $180 million, and that was a $30 million visit that I really feel very strongly that not just our superintendent, Bill, but our lobbying team helped to evoke. And it was under very charged circumstances in terms of some of the political dynamics, and so we've got to call that out. The last bill that you may be familiar with is the property tax buy-down bill. As Taylor and Heather mentioned, we have literally been at the Capitol. They worked all weekend. They've been there till midnight every single night, coming back in the morning. The legislators are exhausted. We're definitely exhausted. In the final 2 days, there were 2 significant property tax bills. The key piece for us was making sure that if there was a property tax reduction, that school districts were not on the hook, because that money needs to be backfilled by the general fund or by some collection mechanism to make sure that we continue to hold our operations dollars not in harm's way. And so we were very successful. Those 2 property tax reduction mechanisms will have to go to vote of the people, which is really important. Tabor requires that you go to a vote of the people, and if you do and they say yes, then we can keep those additional dollars, and the property tax can get reduced, and then there's the funding mechanism to also pay for that. If the voters say no, then we won't be able to keep those dollars. But those were the final 2 adjustments that were made. Many of the constituents in the community have seen large increases in property taxes, and so they really tried to make an equitable version of how those were going to be reduced and how they were going to be doled out, both on the corporate level and on the personal property level. So those bill numbers were 1311 and then Senate Bill 303, and they passed the very final day of the legislative session, which was yesterday. So we'd be happy to take any questions from you all.
We have a few more bills.
Oh, yeah. You want to keep going through? I'm sorry.
No worries. Great. So we also, as you all know, specialize in the state budget. We had the opportunity to work with Senator Rachel Zenzinger from Jeffco this year, former teacher, very education-oriented, and so we saw a lot of different bills come out of that joint budget committee that will be beneficial to our schools. The first one is Senate Bill 99. This was increasing the Tier B special education funding by $40.2 million per year, so finally closing that gap. We are really excited to see that. Additionally, they ran a bill, Senate Bill 241, the creation of Office of School Safety. This consolidated all the different services that were kind of spread across multiple departments into one different office and did a $3 million appropriation there. Additionally, Senate Bill 219 supports the students in facility schools. This is one issue that the Joint Budget Committee really leaned into this year, hearing about how inequitably the facility schools were funded. So they found a different mechanism to have that ongoing funding to support these students. Senate Bill 221, Healthy School Meals for All Program Fund. So as you all may have remembered, that the proposition passed last year, so they had to backfill that by $115.3 million to start paying for that program. And then finally, we're really upset that Richard isn't here today. We also worked on House Bill 1263, which was ran by Lorena Garcia, around translating individualized education programs, his daughter. So we were very excited to be working with her. This created a $500,000 set aside that supports the IEP translation. And so, yeah, again, just want to thank you all again and open it up to questions. I will take a moment of personal privilege. My cousin, Evan Hickerson, will be graduating from Broomfield High School next week. So just want to thank the amazing staff at Broomfield High School as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Heather, Taylor, and Tanya, for all you do for us every year. Board members, questions or comments? Beth?
I just want to comment, just a lot of gratitude. I really appreciate that. It's been a busy time, and you guys are out there fighting the good fight. And I love that you called out Rob and Bill, and I think we've got some really excellent work happening here tonight. And thank you for all you guys do. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nicole?
Thank you for all the work that you do. I don't really have any big questions, but I would love to find a way in the years ahead to touch base sooner than at the end of the session. It's been a while since we've seen you, and it'd be just great to get some of these big recaps and dig a little bit deeper. on a more frequent, I mean, not incredibly frequent, but before the end of the session would be great. So if we could find some time next year, I'd like to carve that in.
We can come during the middle of the year to kind of talk right as the budget is wrapping up in March. Tends to be a good. January and February tend to be when they drop all of the key bills, but then they start really kind of digging in after the budget sets. So we are happy to come. I know we also oftentimes will address your parents' council group just to kind of work with the community and let them know some of the key issues that you all have us working on. So we would welcome that opportunity, and we're very happy to come and discuss that ahead of time. And I know we do plan, a couple of you came for some of our legislative tours, we're planning on doing a lot of outreach during the interim with, as Taylor mentioned, we have so many newbies that we want to tour, but we had a really good meeting with Kyle Brown and some of the new legislators that just got in, so we'd love to welcome that opportunity with the board to discuss those new priorities.
All right, thank you all so much for coming, and again, for the whole year. And I think up next we have Nativity Miller getting ready to tell us about all the exciting changes in bilingual education. Do you have more to introduce, Rob?
That was pretty good. Dr. Miller is on her way up. Board members, I'm just really proud of Dr. Miller, our team, on the work that they've done around bilingual education. If we do a recap from the beginning of the year, we went from a priority to an audit to major changes in the course of less than 9 months. That's pretty significant. So Dr. Miller is here to talk to you a little bit about some of the improvements and some updates. We provided an update to the board in the fall. We just wanted to follow back up in the spring to kind of share with you how things have played out. And so some exciting news to share today. Dr. Miller, take it away.
Sorry, I got to get situated here. All right. Do you want to click for next change? All right. Good evening, Vice President Sweeney Moran and members of the board, Dr. Anderson. Today, we are excited to share a brief update about our ELD co-teaching rollout, our current status for our dual language elementary schools, and the dual language expansion for our middle school strands. Our strategic plan, as you know, is in direct correlation of our goals, which are to provide challenging, engaging, and relevant instruction for our emerging bilingual students throughout our system. Additionally, we believe that customized supports directly supports meeting the needs of our emerging bilinguals, both instructionally and in-school cultures that create a sense of belonging. Our first update is in the area of co-teaching, which we shared with you just a year ago. As a reminder, we relaunched our Cohort 1 schools, and this year we began planning with our Cohort 2 schools. As you can see by the co-teaching timeline, we are nearing the end of year 1 of our implementation plan. Cohort 1 schools relaunched both their learning as well as the co-teaching programming at their schools, while cohorts 2 and 3 engaged in monthly preparation with our co-teaching CLDE specialist to participate in professional learning as well as prepare any school structures for co-teaching. Megan McCracken, our co-teaching district lead, has been working alongside our professional learning team to prepare for our August 2023 launch, which will begin our year 2 of implementation. In fact, just last week, some of our leaders spent the day observing co-teaching models in classrooms in Colorado to prepare for their implementation. Cohort 3, 4, and 5 will begin their preparation starting this fall. This phased approach has not only supported our leaders, it has allowed us to build capacity in our schools and teams and has provided a venue for our BVSD teachers and leaders to learn from each other. As a reminder, co-teaching is an inclusive approach to serving our emerging bilingual students. It provides a learning space where students can have access to grade level standards, peer language models, and language supports and strategies in their general education classroom. Additionally, co-teaching provides collaboration and co-planning for teachers who are versed in language as well as content. Co-teaching was initially launched in 2018. Implementation had started pre-pandemic, however, there were varying degrees of implementation. Therefore, our relaunch included our Cohort 1 schools, which were Community Montessori, Eisenhower, Emerald, and Sanchez. These schools reviewed the co-teaching rubrics and practices, were provided professional learning for ELD teachers who were engaging in this model. There was a redesignation of our district TOSA support that was solely focused on supporting the co-teaching rollout, and our team created an opportunity for school principals to engage in learning and networking with our co-teaching leaders through monthly collaboration time. We began Cohort 2 at the beginning of this year with 8 additional schools who had served 30 or more emerging bilinguals. We were grateful to be able to provide learning and planning to both the teachers and leaders from Cohort 2 throughout this entire last school year. That time included monthly principal collaboration, information meetings with school staff, professional learning introductions to co-teaching and co-planning, brainstorming and planning of school structures, schedules, as well as 2 observations in school districts to have launched and supported co-teaching models. This year, again, has provided our team and the schools team ample time to plan, learn, problem solve, and prepare in a manner that meets the needs of our school and our emerging bilingual students. We are excited and proud that our co-teaching model has expanded from 4 elementary schools to 11 elementary schools and 1 K-8 in just 1 year. We are extremely grateful for the principals of these schools who have committed to implementation, collaboration, and planning with our team. Our second update tonight is in the area of our dual language elementary, and at this time, I will pass it to our CLD director, Kristen Nelson-Steinhoff.
Good evening. Since the last time we saw you and shared the findings from our site review conducted by the New Mexico Dual Language Education of New Mexico back in September of this year, we've been busy providing district-level supports to our elementary schools in the form of monthly principal meetings, action plan support, and reviewing goals and plans for the upcoming school year. As we near the end of this school year, we'll begin planning for the next. We are especially excited about the new Columbine two-way dual language strand for preschool and kindergarten starting next school year. Supporting leadership transitions is another exciting piece of our work at our dual language elementary schools. Here you can see our work since the last time we shared information with you all. A major component of our timeline is the Bilingual and Proud campaign and the implementation of the STAMP assessment in Spanish with our 8th and 5th grade students, our 8th grade students at Angevine, Casey, and Manhattan, and then our 5th graders at Columbine, Pioneer, and University Hill. They're being assessed in May. We're doing all of this in the hopes of valuing their commitment to becoming bilingual and recognizing their pathway toward the seal of biliteracy by the time they graduate high school. Our third update for you this evening is the dual language expansion at the middle level. Since announcing the dual language middle school expansion, we've been hard at work planning with our schools. We've collaborated with a dual language task force at Angevine to prepare for their dual language strand launch in the fall. Additionally, we've worked with the educators at both Manhattan and Casey to increase course offerings in Spanish starting with 6th grade next school year. Initial efforts to align and improve our middle school Spanish literacy instruction has also taken place during monthly sessions with our Spanish LA teachers from Casey, Manhattan, Angevine, and Centennial. This type of collaboration is just a start to what we hope to see moving forward with our expansion. We're excited to be starting the new dual language strand at Angevine and increasing our dual language courses at both Manhattan and Casey. We continue building clarity in programming that ultimately supports our bilingual learners. We know from research that bilingual students who are able to continue their bilingual learning are likely to outperform many of their peers in English-only programming. We have just completed our collaboration with the Angevine Dual Language Task Force. This group was made up of 5 Angevine staff members, a pioneer teacher, a Manhattan teacher, the AP from Sanchez, and the East Network Executive Director, along with members of the CLDE team. The group engaged in learning about the principles of dual language, various best practices, and were charged with making some important decisions. They made some recommendations around which courses to teach in Spanish, made staffing requests, and determined what materials and instructional resources are needed in Spanish. The task force members also planned a session with the whole staff at Angevine to build awareness and have begun thinking about staff learning moving into next year. And then finally, all of this work will be shared with the new Angevine administration as they begin developing relationships across the community and identify their important leadership moves for next year. This slide provides an overview of what dual language courses will be offered at our 3 middle schools. Casey, Manhattan, and Angevine will all have a Spanish LA course, a content course, science or social studies, and an elective course, beginning baile or dance, Latin American art, PE, and/or other art classes, all taught in Spanish. Manhattan will be offering 2 elective courses in Spanish for their 6th graders for a total of 4 classes or 50% of a student's day.
Which one is it? Oh, got it. All right. As you can see, we are working in collaboration with our schools and school leaders to continue support instructional pathways for emerging bilingual students. Our co-teaching implementation plan will continue with year 3 of our rollout this fall. Our elementary dual language schools will begin their action plan work in partnership with our team and their district dual language coach, as well as launch the school year with school-wide dual language essentials professional learning. And our middle level dual language expansion is in full swing with 7 additional course offerings in Spanish across our 3 schools. We are excited to support our dual language middle school leaders with our district dual language coaching, as well as opportunities to engage in dual language professional learning throughout this next school year. We continue to be very grateful for the support from Dr. Anderson and the board with helping us lead this work, and look forward to continuing our work this fall in all 3 areas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Board members who would like to go? Nicole?
Thank you for that. I have a couple questions. One, can you, in our 11 schools that will have the co-teaching model, is that 2 licensed teachers teaching together in all of the classrooms throughout the school, or is it in specific classrooms? Can you share a little bit about what that looks like?
Certainly. So our ELD specialist is a certified teacher and moves in and out of the content area classroom across the week. And so they are typically in a content area. Most of our schools are focusing either on, or are focusing on math or writing time, and so they spend a period of about 30 to 45 minutes each day co-teaching with their the classroom teacher, and then 1 day a week of really strategically co-planning for that instruction. The idea behind that is that the ELD specialist is providing ways to support language development and modeling that and providing that during that planning time and the time when they're collaboratively working together, so that it then begins to extend across the school day. And then really our ELD specialists have the benefit of a content teacher expert working alongside that classroom teacher.
And then is that ELD teacher specific to a school, or is it a grade that they kind of move between schools? What does that look like?
They are specific to a school, and depending on the number of students, emerging bilinguals at our various schools, we have anywhere from a small amount of FTE to multiple teachers. So that really depends.
And then switching gears a little bit, looking at the expanded programs, our expanded bilingual programs, I was pulling up the enrollment matrices for our elementary and our middle schools. And I wonder, is that something we're going to be paying attention to as we, I think, look at Columbine and Uni Hill, for example, as Columbine continues to add grade levels, 50-some students leave Columbine's neighborhood district to go to Uni Hill, and 108 from Crestview, which is geographically nearer to Columbine, leave to go to Uni Hill. Likewise with Angevine, there's about 45 kids going over to Manhattan. Could be a multitude of reasons, not just those the Spanish language program offerings. But in conditions of declining enrollment and where class numbers really support the access of elective courses, is that something we're going to be looking at to ensure we can have robust elective classes and have the adequate number of students enrolled in these programs to ensure their success?
Absolutely. I think there's a need for a really close look at enrollment and supporting our community and understanding what the options are. I will let you know that we're super excited because at all three of those middle school programs, we are adding students who have not been in dual language programs but come from bilingual homes, up to the point where we will have 2 groups of students in each one of the 6th grade classes at Casey, Manhattan, and Angevine that are participating in the dual language, which is really exciting.
And it's also, part of our bilingual campaign, we will be leading into next year as well. So we've sort of scratched the surface with that. That's the other piece of that, is how do we educate our community on what bilingual education is, what their options are, and so that's sort of the next phase of our campaign as well.
Thanks.
Beth?
Thanks so much for that presentation. Just a couple of questions. I appreciate your questions around co-teaching. First question about that, what kind of supports do we have for our teachers in kind of the co-teaching model? I'm familiar with it in the context of special education, and I know all the amazing benefits for all students, but I'm curious about how we're supporting our staff in implementing that.
You want to talk about Megan?
Sure. So I have a member of my team who is taken co-teaching on as her project. And so she is fully embedded inside those schools, working alongside administrators to build their capacity so that they ultimately are able to support their teachers. But we are pulling groups of teachers in small groups here to do professional development and engage in professional learning around best practice. We are going out to them and providing job-embedded coaching as well. She'll spend an entire day out at a school, if that's something that a school needs. And really then referring to the best practices rubric that's been developed and helping schools to really focus in on what they need to work on and provide that support for them.
Thank you. Just one quick question, I might have missed it. What are the different the electives in Spanish available at the different schools? I kind of wanted to hear that again.
Sure. And the board, a few months ago, I believe, you approved at least a couple of them. But there is an introductory dance, baile, that's going to be offered to 6th graders at Casey. Traditionally, they have offered baile at the older students, and so they're going to offer that. They'll also be offering a Latin American art course. Manhattan is looking at offering PE with us in Spanish and some art courses. And then Angevine focused more along the arts side of things. We don't have it all completely figured out quite yet, but that's sort of where they're leaning.
Kitty.
Thank you for this. This is really exciting to see how we're progressing in our dual language education. I have a question, a couple of questions. So if a student is, working towards biliteracy, so they're taking Spanish language arts and English language arts and social studies, science, and math, and then an elective, I guess. What's the difference between Spanish language arts and taking a Spanish elective? I mean,
Absolutely. So, and we can even back this down to the elementary levels, but really a Spanish LA class looks at the language arts standards. And there are adapted standards written in Spanish, because there are some things that are unique to Spanish that come to us out of the fine state of California. And so our teachers really focus on teaching the language arts standards in Spanish versus a world language course where students are learning the language. And so that is the main difference. Oftentimes also in our world language courses, they're designed for students that haven't had experience or exposure to the language. And so, it's that introductory vocabulary building concept development that happens inside our world language, different from our dual language setting.
but it does sound like that the kids who are in the dual language, whereas most kids have 4, what you'd call solids, they have 5.
Yes.
And so it sounds like it needs a lot of commitment by the students to take on all that extra work.
It does, absolutely.
But I'm glad we can offer it to them.
Yep.
Just a few questions. I'll try and be quick. First, I'm wondering, we're looking at this co-teacher model being rolled out throughout all schools, and that's fantastic. I have no doubt that internally we're doing all kinds of evaluations to fine-tune. How are we engaging with our directly impacted families and Latino communities to find out what is and isn't working from their perspective?
Sure. We have heard from many of our families, CAPL to be one of the organizations that we've heard pretty clearly from, that pullout really has not worked for their children. And so really we're encouraged by them to look at other ways in which we could provide service to their students. And so co-teaching is the way that we've chosen and selected to do that. We also, at the school sites, are meeting with families and ensuring that they're understanding what that program model looks like, hearing from them, gathering their opinions. We are gathering videos and creating them, parent testimonials, student testimonials, teacher testimonials around how co-teaching is changing and improving their access and to content at the grade level and to the instruction.
One thing we didn't mention in the co-teaching was that we're working closely with our co-teaching expert, Megan McCracken, who is also working to create a principal toolkit, so to speak, as when you're launching a program or a model like co-teaching at a school, what are the steps to do, which is like engage both communities, have parent nights explaining what the model looks like Kristen said, videos, opportunities to see it. And so that's a piece that we will provide to schools as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I agree. CAPL asked for this, and it's the thing that we should be doing. I just want to make sure we're talking to those families as we're moving through it to make sure that we're implementing it in ways that make sense. Yep. I know we've heard before about some concerns around middle school heritage learners and Spanish language arts integration. Is that something that we feel like this model is tackling appropriately, or is it something that needs to be dealt with in a next stage?
We're super excited, so I can share Angevine specifically. We initially had 36 students from Pioneer register at Angevine for their dual language program. Over the course of spring break, I made calls to our students who come from families that speak Spanish, and we now have a total of 54 students who will participate in the dual language. Families were very excited about the option of their students joining the dual language program. And one of the things that I think we have learned over the course of this year, we did add some students who had not been in dual language into the Spanish language arts, thinking that we might need to do some differentiation for them if they hadn't received Spanish language arts previously. And really what we found was they were able to pick it up pretty quickly. Really what they did was take everything that they had learned in English and were able to apply it to their heart language and began to read at grade level very quickly. And so that was a real pleasant surprise that we had as we were working with that group of students. And we anticipate that to happen for those additional 18 students that will be joining the dual language program.
And in addition, part of our next phase, it will be heritage courses at high school. So that's sort of our next, as we're going into next year and building upon our dual language programs, that's in our next plan for the next new year.
Okay, thank you. And then I know I ask this every time, but I'm still sort of waiting to see when we get there, that we have 3 K-5s working on 3 different models, and I think we've talked about trying to standardize those to 1 or 2 best practices. Is that something that we are getting closer to implementing, or do we not have any idea when that change might occur?
Are you talking about elementary?
Yeah.
Right. So when we, as mentioned, when we did the review, our focus for them was to look at the models they had, 50-50 and 90-10, and to provide feedback. We aren't in a space right now where we're asking Pioneer to change to a 50-50. We're really working at aligning to the 90-10 model as it was intended, in addition to the same way as we are with 50-50.
Rob, I have 2 for you. Is that okay? What's that? 2 questions for you, and then I'll be done. So my first question is, with the kids we've been busing to Manhattan, are we going to keep busing the ones who want to continue going there until they graduate?
I believe we've made a commitment for 1 more year.
It's the current 6th graders for, the current 7th graders for, current 6th graders for 7th and 8th grade, so it's 2 more years, I'm sorry.
And then my last question is, are we seeing this again in the fall?
Would you like to see it again in the fall?
I would very much like to see it again in the fall, both because I think it's very interesting, but also because I don't think we can let Richard leave the board without getting a last presentation about this. So I want to make sure we get a chance to look over this again in the fall.
Yeah, no, I think we'll have new information later in the fall to check in, to give you updates, especially on the co-teaching model. And then maybe we'll hear from some kids how things are happening. You know, this is significant. These are significant changes as a result of our strategic plan and engagement with our community, listening to what it is that they've asked for, and building it in a way that's going to meet the needs, not of just kids who've already been involved, but new kids who are signing up. That is so exciting to me, that our Bilingual and Proud campaign is working, that as we think about being bilingual as a superpower, that is getting roots in our community. We'll continue to take feedback, right? I think the heritage language conversation is legitimate and something I hear often, because our kids who speak Spanish aren't being challenged in the ways they need to be challenged. I love, Kristen, to hear the story about, we were worried if they could handle it, and gosh, they just picked it up right away. You know, never doubt the abilities and skills of our kids. They'll surprise us. And so, taking away some of those limitations and letting them stretch and grow, I think is really great. But certainly, this can continue to be. It's a major component of our Grad Plus framework, and so you'll continue to get updates.
Okay. If there are no more questions, thank you so much for that. Thank you. And our final information item tonight is update on bond program implementation with Rob Price. Do you have an introduction?
Welcome, Rob Price.
All right, good evening, Vice President Sweeney Moran, members of the board, and Dr. Anderson, who just left. And sorry about that. Joining me tonight for tonight's bond implementation update is Chris Stoppenhagen, our new Executive Director of Bond Planning and Construction, and Dr. Gallegos, Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships. It has been a short 5.5 months since voters successfully passed our ballot measure 5A, and I am hoping that you will see in those short 5.5 months we've accomplished a whole lot of work. There we go. With our bond team, as you'll see, we brought on Chris about a month ago. We've hired one project manager, giving us a total of 4 project managers. Brought on a new purchasing agent, a administrative assistant, and we are currently, we have a position posted for a financial analyst. The financial analyst will round out our team for the year. We will look at adding another project manager next year. As you know, we sold our first round of debt in April. That went for, we sold $187 million, which will get us through phases 1 and 2. Right now, this is set up to be 4 phases to get us through completion of this bond program. We've also been working on pre-qualifying vendors as we're working through the bond program. You'll see tonight we have a number of architects that have been selected for schools. So again, we follow a very strict and rigid request for proposal, request for qualification process. We'll continue to work through them. We've shortlisted architects, contractors. We are in the process of shortlisting asbestos consultants and contractors. And we'll bring those on. As they be brought on, contracts will come to the board for approval. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris.
Good evening, everyone. Wanted to start with this timeline here and kind of a snapshot of where we are now and then a look ahead to the next year. So as Rob said, we had the pre-qualification process in March for architects. We selected for this first round of projects, we're calling phase 1, in April. We've tasked them with hitting the ground running. We've already had 2 design advisory team meetings with schools. We've got more scheduled through the end of the school year. And that's going concurrently with CTE visioning wrapping up here, which Dr. Gallegos will speak more to in a little while. So really the objective there is to get a couple meetings in, get these user groups feedback so the architects can go into their next phase of design over the summer, during summer break. We'll also be bringing on general contractors here in the middle of June. We've got RFPs out for that now. So while they're designing, we'll have contractors then doing cost modeling, making sure we're staying in budget on these as we go through. That'll lead us into August when people return. We'll have another 2 to 3 meetings that we'll schedule. And really to kind of refine down those documents, show what they've gotten through the summer based on the initial meetings, and then get to our construction documents that we anticipate having in October. That'll allow the contracting team then to go through their final construction bidding, start procurement, get final numbers, and get a guaranteed maximum price for these projects. Going in then, we'll anticipate kind of starting spring break, getting sub-consultants into the building and ready for a busy summer 2024 construction. So this gives you a little bit more detail into what the next year looks like. So this year we do have a handful of construction projects that we'll be completing. HVAC controls are being replaced in schools. We'll have about 8 of them wrapping up here in June, so that's already underway. We have shade shelters ordered for Douglas, Emerald, Halcyon, and Meadowlark, and we have a timeline to install those about September. Rec field at Boulder High will be replaced. We've got that final design going into production, and that'll be wrapping up at the end of July. New Vista, I'll talk a little bit more of that here in a couple slides and give you some more detail on that. And then Aspen Creek and El Dorado were 2 of the priority roofs we knew were in a little more critical need that we accelerated. We got really favorable pricing. Likely just due to the bond cycle we're in, lesser competition, and when the district decided to go for that bond. So we're seeing the results of that now already. So the design phase we're in then will lead into the construction phase of 2024 for those package of schools. We'll be sending out another package of RFPs this fall for additional architecture teams for that phase 2. So then looking forward, the goal is to have them on in January, the architecture teams. So we get through these design advisory teams by April and take a little relief off staff going into the end of school year so they have time to get these documents kind of designed. That also leads into a really favorable time to be pricing with contractors then with that design wrapping up in the fall. So the master project schedule, you'll see that this is going to be the same thing the next 4.5 years roughly, sort of a rinse and repeat, that we'll have phases of construction and phases of design going concurrently. That goal again to have these packages being designed starting early in the year. New Vista, we have mobilization that's going to start here soon in July. So Adolphson Peterson is our general contractor. We are currently in about 50% construction review documents. We'll have reviews with district departments here this week. We have groundbreaking celebration planning that's underway. That's looking like it's probably going to align sometime in mid to late August, right around the same time as the 30th anniversary of the original building. Students will remain in the existing building while construction is underway, so we have a logistics meeting for site safety and logistics next week with the construction team. Go over with staff what that's going to look like, and that division of contractors, and then the campus remaining intact for education. So the timeline then, you'll see we're just a couple months out from that third quarter where construction begins then. Occupancy right now on the master schedule that we've got is November of 2024. So we'll be heavy into coordination of what that transition to the new building looks like. After occupancy, then we will still have to go into the old building, do abatement, demolition of that building, and then site work. So wrapping up in 2025 is what we're looking like right now. Other projects that we have prioritized is the ADA playground improvements. So we have those critical needs being identified, prioritizing the multi-ILC schools. We are in the midst of doing another RFP for a consultant for a district-wide assessment of all playgrounds. So what that will involve is really assessing to how we have universal access to all equipment and playgrounds throughout the district. Heavy into community engagement. Like I said, we have the DAT meetings going on. We have Community Bond Oversight Committee. We received a lot of great applications for that. So that membership was approved in April. We have that first meeting kickoff next May, which we won't have any action items for, but really just kind of get introduced to the processes, show them what the budget reports are going to look like. We'll have a follow-up meeting then in September will be the next one. And then staff engagement. We're really making sure that we engage with the staff, let them know what's coming, how campuses are going to look like, really addressing the critical needs, and making sure that they have involvement in this process. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gallegos for our CTE update.
Thank you, Chris. We are very excited to share an update on the expansion of career and technical education pathways. Everything that we are doing and designing is focused on creating equitable access to CTE opportunities and on emphasizing the benefits of career and technical education for all students. As a friendly reminder, this process's structure focuses on the development of new pathways and expansion of existing pathways that are being determined by using a process that involves input from a wide variety of stakeholders. Boulder Tech will continue to have highly specialized programs that home high school CTE pathways lead to. Comprehensive high schools will focus on the creation or expansion of programs that reflect community and student interest, as well as the highest demand pathways reflected in local, state, and national labor market data. Middle schools will be creating opportunities using an exploratory approach to a variety of careers. This is our CTE Vision timeline that outlines our collaborative work with our nationally recognized consultants from DLR who have produced dramatic results in other districts. As the board recalls, the timeline for this work is condensed, but it takes a comprehensive approach. We are beginning the recommend phase of the CTE Visioning timeline. Since January, we have held 4 CTE steering committee meetings, created a comprehensive inventory of current CTE pathways, Our DLR consultants have toured secondary schools to examine current spaces. We've held multiple stakeholder input sessions with a variety of audiences, have held weekly workshop sessions between DLR and BVSD admin, held weekly expert sessions with over 45 industry professionals, and now for the very exciting part, we are in the final program pathway validation and will be reporting out to district leadership for final recommendations by the end of this month. Student voice has been key in the CTE visioning process. We have centered student voice by hosting student focus groups at the Boulder Tech Center and at the home high schools in order to learn all about students' passions, interests, and everything that students are interested directly from students. In this revisioning, student voice has been key in the development of implementation of a process for district-wide branding of career and technical education. Student voice, experiences, and perceptions have been key in gathering information that will ensure that we move away from deeply entrenched voc ed perception. We have learned from students what draws them to CTE courses and what have been possible barriers for participation in the past. The guidance from industry experts and the CTE Advisory Committee meetings have been very successful, and we are on track with our CTE visioning timeline. Industry experts and the Boulder Chamber of Commerce have been key in the identification of high demand, high growth, high wage careers. As previously mentioned, we have had over 45 industry experts engage in our industry input sessions. The input from school leaders and counselors has been instrumental in ensuring the guidance from industry experts can be seamlessly aligned with BVSD CTE programming. Student voice, passion, and interest continue to stay centered throughout the visioning process as the identification of 12 pathways in alignment with local chambers and national trends are outlined in order to ensure college and career readiness and success among BVSD students. In alignment with local chamber recommendations and national trends for high demand, high growth, high wage careers, the 12 pathways that have been identified are, drum roll, just kidding, health, bioscience and pharmacy, aerospace, transportation, outdoor rec, natural products, infrastructure, clean energy, IT/technology, advanced manufacturing, arts, media and entertainment, and hospitality and tourism. These strong pathway options will be considered by the steering committee as well as by each school. Final recommendations will be made to district leadership by the end of this month. Oops. Other next steps include following Board Policy FF for renaming the Tech Center and BVSD CTE branding. There's lots of excitement in this rebranding and naming of the Tech Center. This is the perfect time to link moving past the old voc ed perception and embracing exciting new opportunities for our students. We look forward to including the board in this process, of course. And in addition, we will be establishing industry launch partner agreements. Final recommendations will be ready to submit by the end of May. Thank you, board members and Dr. Anderson. I'll now pass it over to Rob Price.
I just want to acknowledge Bianca. This has been a significant lift when you look at the work that started in January. It's wrapping up in May. So Bianca, the entire CTE team, thank you. Significant list. I also want to just express my gratitude to the voters that voted for 5A that continue to support Boulder Valley School District. It's been significant. It wouldn't be possible without our voters continuing to approve, support our bond programs. And with that, we will open it up for questions.
Nicole.
Thank you for that presentation. Dr. Gallegos really mentioned the inclusion of student voice, and we had students here tonight asking for some specific things, and I noticed clean energy was one of the expanded pathways in the CTE. And I was wondering, in the event that they're listening, or they still have time to pick at Fairview High School to get something specific to that there, can you speak to what pathways might be available for in the clean energy bullet you had on your slides?
Yes, most definitely. So this is just a little bit of more explanation about what clean energy is. So clean energy professionals include wind turbine technicians, solar installers, atmospheric scientists, material engineers, hydropower engineers, et cetera. And so each of the schools will be taking pathway recommendations by the end of this month and be able to really work with their community, ensure that the pathway makes sense for them. It's very important for us that our school leaders and the communities at each of the schools is really invested in, and it really owns this. That's needed in order for it to be successful.
And I would just add as well, and Bianca, correct me if I'm off base on this. So some of our CTE pathways will lead to industry certifications, but some will lead to college before graduation, right? And so I think that that's a decision, or some may do both, right? Depending upon, so I think that within clean energy, it certainly sounds, I'm not sure where the industry certification piece of that lays, but I certainly aligns to college before graduation within those clean energy pathways. And if that were the case, it might not be a sequencing, it might be a sampling of clean energy types of courses, right? That might not lead to a clean energy certification. It could be just a pathway of interest.
Yes, that is correct. And also, all of the industry certifications are also available on the Colorado Department of Education website as well.
Thank you. And it's exciting, the expansion of these programs. My 8th grader was able to visit Boulder Tech today. His classmates were really excited about all the opportunities that are rolling out there, that exist there, and that are going to be rolling out in their schools. Second question I have, in the last bond, I know that construction occurred sometimes overnight at school facilities during the school year. Is that an expectation that we have, or families and schools should have, that there might be, in some situations, construction occurring during the academic year, or are we keeping that in the summer? A lot of timelines represented summer, so I just want to set some expectations there.
Well, it'll be dependent on the project. I mean, some of these projects, when you look at some of our large high schools, are several $1 million. They'll have to, a lot of times we start in spring break, we work nights and weekends until we get to the summer. Then the summer months, we work all through those 11 weeks, and then we go back to a rotating schedule. So please know we'll work with school leaders. We'll make sure communication gets out so everybody understands the expectations. A lot of safety protocols. We've got protocols if we're doing asbestos abatement, et cetera, to make sure our kids stay safe. So yes, and we will communicate effectively. So
thanks.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you all so much for the incredible work you're doing. And board members, we often take a break here, but I think we're about 10 minutes from the end. So let's move on to our consent agenda. Okay, consent agenda items, 7.1 personnel, 7.2 approval of minutes, April 25th, 7.3 approval of minutes, April 25th regular meeting, 7.4 approval of the architectural design and engineer services contract for bond fund improvement work at Broomfield High School. 7.5 approval of the architectural design and engineering services contract for bond fund improvement work at Centaurus High School. 7.6 charter bus transportation services for the transportation of students to school-related events. 7.7 closeout to the construction contract for the Monarch Campus Emergency Road Project. 7.8 FY24 frontline renewal. 7.9 FY24 Microsoft license renewal. 7.10 Resolution 2309 to accept bids and authorize construction and maintenance projects. 7.11 Resolution 2311 to join Colorado's statewide investment pool. 7.12 Resolution 2312 non-renewal of license contracts. 7.13 Grant College and Career Connections concurrent enrollment, Colorado Department of Education. 7.14, Grant Equity and Community Engagement, Title VII Indian Education, U.S. Department of Education. 7.15, Grant Operations Solar and Electrical Improvements, U.S. Department of Energy. Are there any items board members would like to pull from the consent grouping? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Stacy, seconded by Kitty. Laura, will you please call the roll on consent?
Discussion.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were,
No, I seconded.
apologies. Yes, please go ahead, Kitty.
So I'm really glad that we have that road, the emergency exit road from Monarch. Rob, do we own the land that it's on? And how come the town of Louisville didn't pay for it?
As Rob Price comes up here, board members, as you can recall, after the Marshall Fire, I think we had significant concerns as a school district around the logjam of traffic that occurred because of a lack of exit out of Monarch High School. I would say that the voters of Louisville had an opportunity during the Red Tail Ridge vote to act to potentially create a road that would go all the way out to, Rob, what's the road on the other side of that?
What is it? 95th?
95th.
Yes, 95th.
Voters did not vote for that, not just for that reason. There's lots of things I think voters took into consideration. It was a pretty close vote. Amidst those conversations, I think this road was a factor. We had the ability, because we owned the land that, we owned some land, not all of the land, and we worked with the city, and we worked with the residents to create this through road. I'm going to stop talking, Rob, because you look like you really want to say something. So
No, and I'll just jump in. Boulder County owns the road. Boulder County has a right-of-way that connects Paradise Lane up to our property line. So from our property line to the student parking lot, we put a road in, and then we connected the two. It's not the City of Louisville's property. So it was our responsibility. If we wanted to put in a secondary access road, then we had to fund it. So, but Boulder County, the neighbors, everyone was fantastic to work with, and we were able to get it completed in a short amount of time.
But this is not an access road. Like, folks aren't going to, it is locked under lock and key and will only be opened in case of an emergency.
That is correct. It's first responders, et cetera. If we have an emergency, we can exit, or if first responders have to get back into the site, they can also do that. Yep.
All right. I think we're ready this time. Laura, will you please call the roll?
Niznik.
Yes.
Rajpal.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Nothing on action items tonight, so that takes us to agenda setting. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up? All right, then.
Just bilingual education for next semester came up.
Okay. Then I think at this point, I would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Kitty, seconded by Beth. Laura, can you please call the vote?
Niznik.
Yes.
Rajpal.
Yes.
Sargent. Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zis. Motion.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, and with that, we're adjourned.